So there's an old saying that goes, youth is wasted on the young. And this is quite evident in such a statement. The young man is talking about how our elders have failed us. No, it is our youth who do not listen to their elders that has failed. Instead, they grasp at every opportunity to try to build themselves up based on what the Western culture has taught you is the primary and what you should and wish and hope to be. And that's all you have here. So let's go through the process. Young fella here is saying, what proofs, what source do we have that Titus sent the entire nation into Egypt on slave ship? See, there's some wordplay that he's using here. Entire. Even your book doesn't talk about the entire. If your book talked about the entire, then the entire West African tribes were not sent into slavery into the Americas. The entire of any nation has never been sent into slavery. So to utilize the words entire is you trying to create a way to get out of the argument by saying that it has to be all or nothing. But, young man, if you would have taken the time to study and look at the Annals of Titus, or in better situation, the War of the Jews, that was written by Josephus ben Matthias, who was the scribe of Titus, meaning that these things were written by a person who actually eyewitnessed the events that occurred. Not like your Bible and Deuteronomy, which are not written by any eyewitness whatsoever. Not like your Gospels of the Bible that are not written by any eyewitness whatsoever. But Josephus, being the scribe of Titus, during the conquering of Jerusalem, and thereafter becoming a Hellenized Jew who lived in Rome and becoming the scribe of Vespasian as well, who is Titus's father, who became Caesar. In his War of the Jews, 409 through 434, he writes of what happened when Titus conquered Jerusalem. Now, when Titus conquered Jerusalem, and if you go read the whole thing that I am telling you to read here, you will see that some of the fighting men who were in sedition to the Roman government were taken in and they were killed. Those who they found to be good looking were used for the triumphant march, which is the march when Titus went back into Rome. That was a normal thing for the Romans and Greeks and even the Babylonians, the Arcadians, everybody. And you can find this in your Bible, how the Babylonians took the best looking, best educated of the northern tribe of Israel into Babylon. So this is a normal tradition that most people, these Mediterranean people, had, but you can even find that in other cultures around the world. But anyway, he took the best looking and used them for the triumphant march back into Rome. You can see this on Titus's arch as well. Now, and that's in Rome. And then all those who were 17 years and under were sent into bondage in Egypt. 17 and under, sent into bondage in Egypt. Now, some that were the lower caste were sent to go and into many different provinces, either to be slaves or to fight in the arenas. So there's a hodgepodge. But as far as anything similar to fulfilling Deuteronomy 28, it was this Titus sending them to Egypt. And it used the definite article in your Deuteronomy 28 to mean the land of Egypt, not a metaphoric place or anything of that nature. Now, to my Igbo people, to which you are claiming to know knowledge of, which is my mother's side of the family, which is part Igbo and part Yoruba, oh, how mistaken you are. It was not until more recent histories that the Igbo people started creating their own myth of the fact of them coming out of the tribe of Dan, which were sent into exile when the Assyrians plundered and conquered the overwhelming majority of northern Israel. The only place they didn't conquer was Jerusalem because Hezekiah bribed them. We can find this in the writings of Sennacherib as well as in your Bible. But these people, these 10 tribes, these other 10 tribes were exiled because they were destroyed. Some went to become slaves in Assyria, while others did escape west to Africa, but it's most likely they went into what is known today as Egypt, Ethiopia, Somalia, into the East Africa, but not West Africa. But in and around the 10th century BCE, 10th century CE, up until more recent times, some Igbos have started claiming that they are descendants from the tribe of Dan, which flies in the face of archaeology and flies in the face of the overwhelming majority of the teachings in the Igbo religion. In the Igbo religion, as well as archaeology, let's start with archaeology. As far as archaeology is concerned, there has been pottery that is found that dates back between 3000 and 2500 BCE, meaning that the Igbo people were living in Nigeria thousands of years before an Israelite was ever conceived of, thousands of years before the Assyrians sent them scattered out of northern Israel. So, if the Igbo people were around in 3000 to 2500 BCE, if Israelites are never mentioned until the Manetha Stele in and around 1400 BCE, if the Assyrians didn't conquer until the 700s BCE, then the archaeology shows that the Igbo people were around before the tribes of Dan, before your Israelites coming out of an Exodus, before any of those things ever happened. The Igbo were already there. And the Igbo have a creation story that talks about Chechua. Chechua was their god who cannot be fully understood, cannot be fully defined, who did not have any anthropomorphic human qualities of walking around and having attentive meetings and any of those things, but was the sovereign deity. And then he took lower deities and appointed them jobs to have on earth, Allah, which is the name for the mother goddess earth, who gave them different duties to handle. Kind of like how your God, that your Yahweh, has angels that he then dispatches to go and do and commit to duties. So no, none of that makes any sense. You need to learn the Igbo history and stop just grasping on those who have this desire to verify or validate themselves by one of the most popular readings in the world today. And it is only in the world today. During the transatlantic slave trade, they were not trying to be Jews or considered themselves to be Jews. This is something that happened much, much, much later in their understanding. So, you, sir, might need to go and listen to some of these elders to which you talk about, because youth is truly wasted on the young. And other archaeological evidence demonstrate that there were human activity 250,000 years ago in this region of Africa. So, which one is most likely? That the people who were in this land, that during the last ice age possibly migrated north to warmer climates, and then some of their traditions and teachings and language similarities that you have with the Jewish people were actually picked up and carried with them to the more tropical areas that weren't suffering as much during the last ice age 50,000 years ago. And after the cataclysmic Younger Dryas freeze and then melting, that they forgot about their true origins and then manifested a brand new type of origin that was already taught in West Africa prior to any Israelite ever being created. As I always say, you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations.